First, we'll get started with dynamic positioning based on a table. To do this, we'll first take a look at the protocol because you need some specific adaptations to your protocol. So in your protocol, we are going to use data from a table. In the table definition, you will need to add two additional options called XPOS and YPOS to your table columns. Also, if you want to create links between your shapes, you'll need an additional that's storing these links. So in this case, it's table parameter 300, and you will see here we have two additional columns called shape1 and shape2, which will be used to connect two shapes, and these both have a foreign key to the table 100 where our shapes are stored. You can find this protocol attached to the training files. Okay, so now let's move on to our DataMiner system. I've already prepared a view here, so I'm going to add a new element. I've already uploaded the protocol previously, so it's Skyline Communications Dynamic Positioning Basic. I use the latest version, and I'm going to name the element Dynamic Positioning Table. Okay, let's create this. Okay, so I'm going to add two shape rows or three, and now we'll go to the visual overview, and I'll add a new blank visual. Yes. Okay, so now it's opening up in Visio. And firstly, I'll attach a grid or draw a grid that we'll use as reference. So from the business, charts and graphs, charting shapes, stencil, I'm going to use the feature comparison. So I'm going to drag this on here. 10 by 10's okay. I'm gonna restyle it a bit. No fill. Use black's maybe a bit harsh here. Gonna go with the dark gray. That's a bit lighter. And the text color. Also gonna change to the dark gray. Yeah. Okay, something went wrong there. Go back. Okay, pointer tool, select the grid. Okay, use gray on the text. Okay, and currently the text is not very meaningful, so I'm just gonna change this to reference numbers from our grid. So 1 or 0 down to 9. 7, 8, 9. Okay, gonna do the same thing on top. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 7, and 8. Okay, going to... Okay, let's remove this background. Okay, now select those number shapes. And rotate the text. Yes, that should be more readable. Okay, now I'm going to add a just a basic rectangle, which we'll be using to display our table. And I'll also be adding two squares which we'll use as reference shapes. So I'm gonna resize these to be the same size as one of the squares in our grid here. Zoom in a bit. Yeah, that's about it. Okay, I'm going to just copy, put one on the other side, inside of the grid. Okay, and now I'm going to add some text to it just as reference. So this is 0.00, this is 0.99. And we're also going to assign some shape data. So for our reference shapes, we need two labels, xpos and ypos. Okay, and so I'm gonna give these double zeros as shape. When you use 0 as reference, remember to always use double zeros, because otherwise Visio does not interpret it correctly. Okay, so for the other shape we can simply use 9 and 9. So again, xpos and ypos. Okay, 9, 9. Okay, I noticed that the feature comparison table we've used is leaving some text here, so I'm also going to remove that one, as we don't want it on our display. And now I'm going to add just one more square, which will be actually dynamically positioned. Alright, so we have just a simple square here. Again, we add our shape data, xpos, and in fact for this one we only need the xpos because it's retrieved from a table and it will automatically find the y position in the table because we defined it in the protocol as I showed you earlier. Okay, and so then we're using a placeholder to link it to a parameter. We're going to use the asterisk because we're assigning the Visio immediately to our element. So it's just going to look in this element and then parameter 100. So the table parameter. Okay, and then just for reference, we're going to add a parameter control here so we can easily change the shape data whenever we like. Parameter control for parameter 100. Okay, parameter control options. And we are going to include a right. And then just one more, the element. And again, we're going to use wildcard because our Visio is attached to the element directly. All right, that should do it. Let's save and take a look in DataMiner. And as you can see here, we already have our dynamically positioned blocks. And if I change the data on one of the tables or one of the table entries, so you see the moving right now. It's not very good yet, so because we don't see what is actually on there. So I'm gonna make a small change in our Visio and just add a wildcard in our positioned shape. And save, of course, and that should immediately update. All right, and so now you see that our index is displayed inside of our shape. So I'm gonna move this out of the way a bit further so we can actually see the difference. Okay, that's good. And I'm gonna move this one to something like 9.5. Okay, so you can see again the center of our dynamically positioned shapes matches, in this case for the 0, 0, the center of our reference shape, and for the other ones it's automatically positioned on a grid that is based on those two reference shapes. You can also notice that the reference shapes are not visible. If I move the 0, 0 out of the way, you'll also see that there is no visible shape there. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you is that these shapes will also show the alarm level of the row. So first I'm going to add an alarm template. I'm gonna create a new one. Okay, template 1 is fine. And so I'm already going to add for the lines and the shapes alarms. Okay. Alright, that's immediately applied, and you can see the dynamically positioned shapes become green, and in our table we have a drop down, and I can choose any severity and the shape will immediately follow the severity of the row. Alright, so as you've already seen, whenever I change some data, immediately the shape is also repositioned. And there's another cool trick you can do with dynamic positioning. You can right click and then you have the arrange option in a visual overview that is using dynamic positioning. So you click the arrange from the context menu, and then you can start to drag the shapes. So I'm gonna put this one here, this one right there, and this one somewhere around there, and just click apply. And as you can see, immediately also the data in our table is updated. So it's rounded down a bit in the display here, but on the shape itself you can see that it's been updated with the double value. So now if I just change it back to, I don't know, 0, so you see the shape switches back to the 0 position. Alright, now the next thing we'll be adding to our view here is connection lines. So in order to do this, we'll first go back to our Visio file, and I'll add another parameter table. So I'm just going to our parameter control table. So I'm just going to copy paste this and assign it to table 300. So we also have our connections table visible. And of course I'll also need some kind of shape to use for the connectors. So in order to do so, I'm going to draw just a simple straight line. And I'm going to give it some thickness so it's clearly visible. So I'm gonna use weight 3, that looks okay. And then also on this line shape, I'll be adding some shape data. So to create a connector, the name of the shape data is connection. And then we'll need to assign excuse me, an element and the parameters to use. So again, for the element we'll use a wildcard, then add a pipe. First parameter, if you remember from the protocol, the first shape is parameter 302, and then again a pipe, and the second shape is parameter 304. Okay, so that should do it. Let's save and go back to DataMiner. Alright, so we don't see any changes yet. Why? Because we don't have any connections yet defined yet in our table. So I'm just gonna switch to the table view, add a few connection shapes, or connection lines rather. And so now I'll go back to data, and so we have 3 shapes named 1, 2, and 3. So I'm gonna connect shape 1 with shape 2, save this, and as you can see, we immediately have a connection that also has alarm coloring, and so we can also give our connection an alarm, and it's almost immediately changes color. Right, so let's add some more connections. Connect shape 2 to shape 3. Okay, and then 3 back to 1, so we get some nice rectangle. Alright, and now these shapes or these connection lines are also dynamic. So if I move shape 4 to say position 5 on the x-axis, you'll see that immediately the lines are also refreshed. So these connections are very powerful lines. So this is a very nice demo to see how the positions are working, but it's not a very practical example. So in our next view, we'll change this, and we're going to add a map, and we're going to use GPS coordinates to display some cities. It could be positions of SNG trucks, of headends, of marine vessels if you use world map, whatever you choose. Right, so let's go back to our Visio now. Okay, so we're back in Visio, and we're going to change our nice grid view here to an actual map. So first I'm going to insert a picture of a Belgium map. Okay, this one looks okay. Edit, okay. Scale and resize a bit. Alright, gonna send it to the background. Okay, so now we still have our grid here and our reference shapes. I'm going to disable the grid, or in fact I'm going to delete it completely, and so now we're going to redo our reference shapes. So the first one, let's place it on the city of Bruges, and the city of Bruges will need some GPS coordinates. So that's 51.21 and 3.22. Yes, I looked those up. I don't know them by heart. And the second reference shape we're going to place over Brussels. And so then for Brussels, our coordinates will be 50.85 and 4.35. Okay, in fact, I need to switch those rounds because the Y position is latitude. Okay. Right. Gonna also change this text to Brussels. Okay. Also here I need to switch them around. Okay. Make this Bruges. Alright, and then that's basically all we need to do to have a map layout. So now I'm going to save this, and we're going to go back to DataMiner. So now we see our map, but we don't see any shapes yet. Why? Well, we haven't adapted our positions here yet. So let's add one for the city of Ghent, which is, no, okay, 4 and then 51. That's about Ghent. Now, the second one we're going to change to the city of Liège to 50.64 and 5.57, and that should get us closer to the target. Alright, spot on. And now for the third, we're going to put it to the city of Arlon. 5.81 and 49.68. All right. Ooh, that's way off. It should be 5.81. Okay, and as you can see, we've placed our reference shape here on Brussels, and these shapes are way beyond. So the coordinate system is working anywhere beyond your reference shapes. So in the first example, we've used 0, 0 and 9, 9, which were the extremes of our display, but that's not mandatory, so you can choose any point within your shape or within your available space as a reference point. Alright, so now the next thing we'll do is start working with multiple shapes. In order to do so, we go back into our Visio. And of course we need to tell the visual overview engine which shape to use. So in order to do that, we're going to add an additional shape data. And this one will be named subscription filter. Okay, so the value has a bit of a special syntax here, which you need to keep in mind. So it's value equals 108. 108 is the parameter ID in our protocol. Then space, double equal sign, space again, and then the actual value. So in this case, we'll use 0 because 108 is a discrete parameter and 0 is used as discrete value for the square. Okay, so now let's duplicate this one, copy paste, change the shape to a circle. Okay, and then we're also going to change the subscription filter to be 1. Okay, that's it. We're going to save in Visio. And go back to DataMiner. At first sight, we don't have any changes yet because all of our shape types right here are square. So now if I change one to be a circle, you see the shape immediately updates to be a circle, so we can do this for all of them, or just one of them, whatever you choose. So I'm gonna change them all to circle for now. And so then we have circular shapes. In practical applications, you can use this to distinguish, for example, between main head ends and regional head ends, or just whatever you choose, so you can distinguish between different types of shapes. Okay, so now we have circular shapes, and then there is one last option I would like to show you for the dynamic positioning with tables. So let's again move back to our Visio. Okay, let's just close and reopen. Right, and then this next option is actually an option on page level, so make sure you don't have any shape selected. You do define shape data on the page, and then the shape data label is options, and the value is arrange mode equals immediate. Okay, save that with Control S and go back into DataMiner. You will not see any changes, in fact, but there's one important change. If we go into arrange mode, we can just drag the shapes around. Let's put this one somewhere over here in front. Okay, and so as you can see, the data is updated immediately in the table. So as soon as you drop one of those shapes, let's move them around a bit more, the data is immediately updated in the table without need to click the apply button. Do you want this? I think it depends on your location. Sometimes you will not want people to be moving your shapes around and use them only based on the data. Okay, so let's close our arrange mode. And then this is the end of our demo on the dynamic shape positioning based on tables. I have one last exercise for you that you can do as a training. We have some additional shapes here, like octagons and stars, and also in our connections we have different line types. So as an exercise, you can edit the Visio to support the dashed lines, the thin lines, and the different shapes. Okay, so that is the end of the first part of our training using dynamic positioning based on data coming from tables. Now let's move on to the dynamic positioning using properties.